I'm so happy to be here, and I want to extend a special welcome to all of those on the Facebook live stream. We're really glad you're there. So, somebody had mentioned it's birthday Sunday. You know, we've got a really big birthday coming up next month. We're going to turn 250 years old. And I tell you, I feel every year of it. Well, our country is turning 250 on the 4th of July. So this is a perfect time to consider this whole idea of freedom. We consider ourselves to be a free country, and many people have fought and died for that freedom. However, today I want to take it to a personal level. What is it that helps you to feel free? Or maybe you don't feel free. Is there something that seems to be squashing you, to be limiting and boxing you in? You know, sometimes people will say, oh, I'll be free when I've got enough money in my bank account, and then I can just travel and do whatever I want. Then I'll be happy. Sometimes it's, oh God, if this health issue would just go away, then I would be free and I could dance. So there are a lot of conditions sometimes on our freedom, right? Many of us are in a continual fight for freedom. Sometimes we are struggling to be free from something outside of us, such as situations, circumstances, maybe people we don't care for very much. Sometimes we're fighting against things that are on the inside. Sometimes we're struggling to be free of our own negative thoughts and feelings, maybe old outdated beliefs, maybe self-destructive habits or addictions. Those are all ways that we can be imprisoned and maybe not even realize it. Sometimes we feel like we have to just push, resist, eliminate, get rid of all those things that are weighing down on us. And we often carry this mindset of, oh, I'll be free when that thing changes, which is implying that we're not free now. But today I want to talk about a different level of freedom. This is a freedom of letting it be. This is a freedom that begins inside your spirit. This kind of freedom requires us to accept what is and to live from the truth of who we really are, our divine identity. We can let reality be what it is, and we can let our true selves be. Now, when I talk about this kind of freedom of just let it be, I'm not saying resign, give up, just become a doormat that everybody can walk right over. It's not that kind of freedom. This is the kind of freedom that happens when you are acting authentically from your divine self, and you naturally know what to do. But it comes from an acceptance of what is. It's only then that we're going to take appropriate action. Even though this sounds contradictory, freedom is when we surrender to our true self. Freedom is when we give up the fight that the ego self is always waging against life. So today, we're going to encourage our divine self to naturally flow from the source of all power and all freedom. To dive into this concept of freedom, today we're going to look at 3 different spiritual traditions, because I know that you all are interested in hearing about some other ways of connecting into your spirit. Of course, we're going to include unity as one of our traditions. That'll be kind of our baseline. Then we're going to talk about Advaita Vedanta Hinduism, and that's a mouthful, and you're going to have to say that 3 times fast. And our third one is Taoism. We're going to invite teachers from each of those traditions, including Emilie Cady, Ramana Maharshi, and one of my favorite sages, Winnie the Pooh. I loved Winnie the Pooh when I was a child. So now, as we go through each of these traditions, I'm going to wrap each one up with just a short little practice that you can take home with you to work on your spiritual freedom, because we are all about practical application here in Unity. Now, as we're going through this talk today, I want you to notice how Unity's second principle connects all three traditions. And you recall, I love that you have the principles on the wall. And I've got a little bit different little summary of the second principle. But basically it says that our essence is of God. Therefore, we are inherently good. That's just a quick, easy way to remember it. Our essence is of God. Therefore, we are inherently good. So watch for that as we talk about these traditions. Each of these traditions, even though they may have it in different terminology and different ways of phrasing it, points to our divine essence and to this implicit freedom that we already have. Each of these traditions will encourage us to release our belief systems, our bonds to our belief systems, to realize the true self, and ultimately to just effortlessly flow with life. So are you ready to be free, to let it be? Yes. Let's hear the zeal. Yes! That's what I love. Melissa, you did a great job getting everybody ready. So let's get started. Let me see if I can get us to the next slide. All right, I love this. All right. Yeah, because that's how we're feeling. We're excited. We're free to let it be. So our first tradition that we're going to talk about is unity. We're going to focus on the freedom that we can find in our divine identity. Our teacher that we're inviting is Emilie Cady, and I'm sure that many of you are familiar with Emilie Cady. She was a very early pioneer in the Unity movement and wrote what's sometimes called the Unity textbook, Lessons in Truth. She says in that book that man is bound only by the belief that he is bound. So according to Emilie, what is it that binds us? Our beliefs. And specifically, we have this belief that we are bound by the physical world. And that's called a material consciousness or a sense consciousness. So we feel imprisoned by everything that's happening all around us. However, Emilie says that no circumstance can limit our spiritual identity. Outer circumstances, things, or people of themselves have no power. Now that may not sound right, because it seems like some people are pretty powerful or some nations are pretty powerful. But what we're talking about is power over the spirit. In our first unity principle, we remember there is only one presence and one power, God the good omnipotent. Everything else is just a reflection. So when we remember that that's the only power, we can move into a spiritual consciousness. That level of consciousness then frees us to see a greater reality. So what is that greater reality? Well, Emilie says that no matter what happens in your life, no exceptions, no matter how evil it may appear, no matter how terribly a person may act out, that God is present within everything. If God is everywhere present, then God has to be present even within that tragic situation. It may not be a good thing. We don't have to like it. But we can go into our inner self and we can feel that, oh yeah, the presence of God is here with me. The presence of God is here with us as we go through this disaster or through this war or whatever might be happening, that God is always there. And that gives us tremendous freedom. We can rise above those circumstances. We can then move beyond that sense consciousness, the five senses, and see God present. Emilie says that our freedom actually comes from knowing our identity. She says that we are divine heirs. We are children of God. God is our true source, not the outer world. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. How many times have you heard that? But do we believe it? As we can begin to realize this divine spark within us, and in unity you'll sometimes hear that called the Christ self, the Christ light. As we realize that, oh, that's who we are, we become free. We become heirs of God. We're no longer servants or bound to the world, but we are children of spirit. So we have a little practice for you to take home. And one of Emilie's favorite practices was the stillness, which I'm sure you naturally do that. Even if you can only take 5 minutes a day. Emilie says, go apart from the world. So set your cell phones and your computers away and just go and sit and be still and practice the presence. What does that mean? How do I practice the presence? You turn away from, you know the thoughts are there, but you turn away from them and you just breathe. And you just feel, allow yourself to be and to feel. And sometimes for me it comes up as sort of like this background energy. It's like, almost like little sparkles that you can feel, oh wow, that's within me and it's all around me. And it may come up in very different ways for you. It might not be sparkles, and that's okay. But just see what arises for you. But give yourself the chance with a few minutes of stillness. Emilie also suggests another practice, and this one's a little more active, and that's the practice of forgiveness. According to Emilie, forgiveness is about giving good for evil. It's not an eye for an eye. It's giving absolute good. And when we do that, we release ourselves from the bondage of that resentment or that anger, and then we release our brothers and sisters as well. So now we've talked about unity. Let's move to our second tradition. Our second tradition is called Advaita Vedanta. Say that with me now. Advaita Vedanta. I just love to say that. Advaita Vedanta is going to focus on freedom in the boundless self. Now, Advaita Vedanta, you may not have heard of this one before. It is the philosophical branch of Hinduism, and it means, roughly translated, non-dualism. Advaita Vedanta tells us that there is a unity in all of existence, and that the individual soul is one with an absolute reality, which in Hinduism is called the Brahman. So we are not separate from it. So instead of God or the Christ self, they say Brahman. Same thing, right? Pretty close. And it's the knowledge of Brahman, or absolute reality, that then causes our liberation. Our teacher that we're going to invite in is Ramana Maharshi. And some of you may have heard of him, may have read some of his teachings. Ramana says, let come what comes, let go what goes, find out what remains. I love that, and I thought that fit in perfectly with our title today, Letting It Be. Ramana tells us that it is the knowledge of self that helps us to find freedom, of that true self. And he says, be as you are. You don't have to be anything else. You get to be you, because that's the best thing there is. Our suffering, according to Advaita, comes from mistaken identity. It comes from believing that we are all of these labels that we put on ourselves, such as our jobs or our successes or our failures. It may be we identify with what has happened to us. But Advaita says that's not true. What you are is the awareness behind the experiences. You are the observer self. Ramana Maharshi uses the image of a blue sky filled with white clouds. And he says, you are not those clouds, but you are the sky that encompasses them. Which I love that image. We're going to play with that during our meditation later. So we're going to have a little practice for Advaita Vedanta. Our practice is to do a little bit of self-inquiry. Ask yourself some questions every day. Do a little check-in and say, okay, who is aware right now? If you find yourself like getting really stressed out, or you're getting frustrated about something, or if you find yourself thinking a judgmental thought about someone, pause for a moment and say, okay, who is aware of this thought? Or who is aware of feeling angry or frustrated? And the minute that you ask that question and you start identifying with that who is aware, you step back and become the observer, and you're no longer the feeling or the thought. Instead of being the cloud, watch them float by. Now, our next tradition, and our last one, is Taoism. And we're going to focus on the freedom of letting it be. So as you can see, we have a very special teacher for Taoism. This is Winnie the Pooh. And I was inspired by a book called The Tao of Pooh by Benjamin Hoff. Has anybody ever read that book? Okay, great. Yeah, you're familiar with it. I read it when I was in college, and I'm just like, oh, I love this. So if you're not familiar with Taoism, Tao is about the way of the universe. It's the way. We often hear that in Christianity too. Jesus talked about the way. Taoism is about a natural harmony that exists between both heaven and earth. In Taoism, whenever it sees a duality, it considers those to be opposing expressions of the same energy or of the same principle. And when Melissa was coming in, she had her flute, and her flute bag had the yin-yang symbol on it. Remember the little symbol with the black and white figures in there? It's almost like they're chasing each other, but they're within the same circle. And that's how they see duality. Now, Winnie the Pooh is a perfect spokesperson for Taoism, according to Benjamin Hoff, because he says things just are as they are. He has a very carefree and effortless attitude. Interestingly enough, in Taoism, there really is a concept called Pooh, but it's not spelled the same way. It's P'(U), and it's like a softer U. Pooh, pooh, like you're blowing a little insect away from your mouth. Pooh means uncarved block. So the uncarved block is your inner nature. It's what you were when you were born. It's your natural self. Whenever we can let ourselves and other people just be whatever it is that we need to be, we are allowing the Pooh. Whenever we just allow ourselves to be simple, to go back to our original nature, then there's a tremendous power that can be tapped into that. Whenever we let things just happen, we're following the Pooh way. It's a natural way that allows things to work the way that they need to work. And whenever we live this way, in this kind of harmony, the Taoists say we tap into a natural serenity, a natural contentment. And they consider that to be one of the most important goals of Taoism, to be happy. What a great spiritual system, right? So another concept within Taoism that I want to bring up, and Rose had mentioned this earlier, was the Wu Wei, and that's W-U-W-E-I, Wu Wei, and that means effortless action. We can visualize the Wu Wei as a great river that just flows over and around the rocks. It's always finding the path of least resistance and just allowing itself to just go where it needs to go. Rather than try to force or push things. When we are doing things the Wu way, we're allowing circumstances to work out the way that they need to. When we let things happen the natural way, we can be more like Pooh. So for our practice for Taoism, this is going to be a little bit different than the other two. We're going to WWPD. What would Pooh do? And in Pooh's stories, there was this little song. And I'm going to invite Tim to come up and help us. Would you all like to do a little sing-along that Winnie the Pooh used to sing? Sure. Okay. Awesome. I love it that you're so willing. Just as Tim was when I sprung this on him right before the service. So thank you, Tim. So the song is called Coddleston Pie. Does anybody remember this from the Pooh stories? You may not. Coddleston Pie was something that whenever life's circumstances got to be just too confusing, when things felt like a riddle, then Winnie the Pooh would sing Coddleston Pie. Basically, this song means that, life is a riddle. So all we can do is just know who we really are, our inner nature, our uncarved block, and then let ourselves flow naturally where we belong. This song is about accepting things as they are. It's about knowing what you can and maybe what you can't do, knowing what your limits are, so that then you can take appropriate action. So, you all are going to help me. You've got a really easy part. You only have one line, but you're going to repeat it at the beginning and end of each verse. So the line couldn't be easier. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. That's pretty easy. You want to repeat it with me? Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. I love it. You got it. You're geniuses. So I'll point at you whenever you are going to be singing this line. So we've got 3 verses. Each verse begins with that and ends with it, okay? Then we'll have a little fun stuff in the middle. And Tim is going to have a little background music for us and set the key. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. A fly can't bird, but a bird can fly. Ask me a riddle and I'll reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. Oh my God, you did a great job. Okay, second verse is coming up. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. A fish can't whistle and neither can I. Ask me a riddle and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. Oh God, you're so good. Third and last verse. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. Why does a chicken? I don't know why. Ask me a riddle and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. And one more time. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. Oh God, you're wonderful. Give yourself a hand. Life feels like it's just a little too much and you need to let it be, you can sing Coddleston Pie. Okay, so we're going to just wrap this up, even though it's been so much fun. I've so enjoyed being with you. But let's talk about a little recap. So we've covered 3 different spiritual traditions, and each of them talks about freedom from a little bit different perspective, the freedom of letting it be. And we remember that each of those traditions reflects unity's second principle, as found in the truth of our divine identity. So our first tradition was unity, and our teacher was Emilie Cady, as you remember. She taught us about releasing our bondage to our beliefs, and then recognizing our true identity as divine heirs. Our second tradition was Advaita Vedanta. And we had a teacher named Ramana Maharshi who taught us that the true self is one with absolute reality, or the Brahman. And we learned from Advaita that our true identity is the boundless self, like the blue sky that holds the clouds. And our third and last tradition was Taoism. And we had a special guest star, Winnie the Pooh, who taught us to just stop forcing life and flow with it, the Wu way. Our identity is naturally the Tao, or the way of the universe. And all we have to do is flow with it. So when we let life be what it is, we are free. When we let our true self be, we are free. Rather than fighting so hard for freedom, we are instead releasing into freedom. So follow the flow of your life. See where love leads you. And then let your spirit guide you into right and perfect action. The light of God within each one of us can never be bound. And I invite you to let this mighty power loose as you move through the world. I invite you to set it free and let it be.